Welcome into another edition of The Session with Londa and David. My name's David Austin, and sitting across from me in a beautiful navy blue jacket, very metropolitan looking, Londa Joanne Sherwood Austin. How are you, darling dimple?
I'm great.
It is such a fun time to be here doing our show today.
I'm really excited about this show because I said to you this morning, I said something, and then I said, I wish I could talk like that on the show. And you said, you can. And I said, oh, should we just cut loose? And you said, let's do it.
Well, that's what's exciting about this particular episode, because
so watch out.
This is part 3 of the starting over edition of The Session with Londa and David, brought to you by Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants. Contact Londa for help with your business, big or small, at 509-491-2663. That's Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants, 509-491-2663. And I'm super excited about this show because this edition of the Starting Over Part 3 is all about what happens if you start over, you go out on a limb, you take change your entire life, and wow, was it a mistake. I mean, what if you screwed every single thing up and the only thing you hear when you get out of bed in the morning is the sad trombone? Mm-hmm. That is what this edition of Starting Over is all about, and I have a preview for you.
Okay, lay it on me.
What's the worst that can happen?
We'll find out.
What's the worst that can happen if you screw it all up? And we'll find out if we screw up this show. Because what's the worst that can happen? I think that's it.
I don't know. I want to, though, after talking over the last few weeks with people about this concept of starting over, I want to define starting over.
I like it.
Because I've had people that were a little confused.
Okay.
Maybe, or just needed some clarification, or, you know what, I'm not blowing up my whole life and moving to a new city, or I'm not starting over in a new career, so I'm not really starting over. But starting over can look like a million different things. Right. And I want to be really, really clear about that.
Well, and I had confusion about it as well.
Yeah. And that's okay. And that helps us to, better define or redefine it for people. This is why you need to share this series with probably everyone you know. Because starting over can look like, for instance, we've talked about some of the big things, leaving a marriage, getting remarried, moving to a new city, starting a new career. That is starting over, obviously, but also it can also look like you added a family member. Yeah,
having another kid to save a relationship, or...
Well, not even to save a relationship, just
for
having
whatever
another kid.
reason. Yes.
That's starting over because it's a whole different dynamic.
Sure.
Subtracting a kid, your kid goes to college.
Oh, I gotcha.
Or, moves out.
Or murder.
No. There'll be no murder here.
Look out, Benjamin.
But that is starting over as well. And, I remember when my oldest left home for the Air Force, and I thought I was going to die. Like, every day, I thought that my heart was going to break. It was sad. I'd be, standing there doing the dishes and just be crying for no reason. And so that was starting over. So adding a family member, subtracting a family member, even like starting school can be a starting over moment for the child, for the parent, for the teacher, all of that. Coming back from, a holiday break and getting back to school or whatever, that can be a starting over. So I want to be really careful to not be so narrowly defined on things.
Sure.
So that people can figure out, how they can apply these principles to other areas of life. So that's what I wanted to say. It was really important for me personally to say that, because I know that the principles that I talk about whenever I speak, whenever I teach or train, and on this podcast, typically those can be applied to your life across the board.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's interesting because I was talking to somebody offline about a week ago about starting over, and it's not like you're playing a video game and you lost a life, so your starting overs are limited to a certain number. You can infinitely start over in life.
And when you start over, you're starting over with all of the knowledge that you have from everything you've done.
That's exactly right.
Which is part of the reason you don't need to be afraid of starting over.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to talk about is, because we talked a lot in the second part of the series about finding the inspiration and playful ideas and things like that. And so, what's your perfect day look like, that visualization exercise and everything. But what if you're really, really stuck and you just don't know, you don't feel passionate about anything. You don't dream about anything. There are a lot of people that are in that place. They're like, well, I'd love to start over because I'm kind of bored or whatever, but I just don't know what to do. And so I want to speak to those people for just a moment and say, there's a couple things you can do. One is to stay put until you have a little clearer idea.
Okay.
A little clearer vision. So just stay put, keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing what you're doing until you know a little bit more.
Sure.
The other thing is to explore your childhood. What did you used to be passionate about? When you were a kid, what got you really excited? When you were in high school, what did you think you wanted to do when you grew up? And some of those things can give clues to maybe what, dreams you've set on the shelf, and now it's time to dust them off and maybe pursue them. Maybe not, but it's something to explore.
Sure.
And so those are some ideas that I wanted to give as well before we start into what do I do if I take the leap and I fucked it all up?
You said a bad word.
I didn't really say it.
I filled in the blanks. And thankfully, because this is a podcast and not broadcast over the airwaves, the FCC does not regulate this yet. They don't.
Right.
So you can say whatever you want to say.
And if I really say what I want to say, that's what I want to say about part 3 of this series is, what if I fuck it all up?
Yeah, what if you fuck it all up?
Because that's real. Sometimes you do. So you brought up a really good point, circling back to what you said. That is part of when I'm working with people, coaching them, I ask, what's the worst thing that could happen? And we play that out.
And what is the worst thing that can happen? I've been really sad at different points in my life. Really not a lot of them, but
for 3 seconds at a time.
That's exactly
that's
right. And every time I've ever been sad, I remember what it felt like to not be sad, and I'm not sad anymore. It's weird. So I say to people when I'm coaching them, what's the worst moment of your life? Think about it. Remember it. How's it feel now? And that changes perspective.
Did you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, sure.
The worst moment of my life?
Yeah.
See, we're different people, so I'll bring a different perspective for people on this.
Yes.
It's still really painful for me.
Okay, what is it?
When my mom died.
Okay.
Hands down.
The worst moment of your life was when your mom died.
Yep.
And how long of a period of sadness was there for you?
It's been 11 years.
Okay.
And I'm still broken about it.
And how do you get past it? How do you move on every day?
I don't know. I try to think about, a few years after she died, I did have a moment where I thought she'd be so disappointed that I've kind of given up on life.
Okay.
Because she and I did talk about, she would say, wait till your mid-40s. Like when I would say to her, God, this raising kids thing is a tough gig, because it is. And she'd say, wait till your mid-40s. About your mid-40s, you're going to start experiencing some freedom. You're going to be able to pursue the things you want. You're just hang in there, And, and then she left me before that happened. And so, yeah, it sucks. I don't have my mom with me to be, telling me that she believes in me or that, or whatever, you have that shared history with somebody. It's important. And so I guess the thing that gets me up in the morning and keeps me from, driving off a cliff is thinking about, I don't, if she were here, she'd be disappointed if I didn't move forward, you know, because I was raised on, her motto was, life's hard, get over it.
Okay.
And so, you know, I think about that, but yeah, so for me, it's that, and maybe this is a little bit of what you're talking about, I'm still here.
Yes.
So I survived.
Uh-huh.
I made it through that.
Yep.
So I can make it through this. So that's a little bit of I guess, what I do.
That's an
But there's still a profound sadness deep in my soul.
Well, you said some words that are unrelatable to me, and let me tell you what I mean.
Profound sadness?
No.
Because you're the happiest guy I know.
Well, yes, but
genuinely.
It's interesting the way you said when you were talking about your mother passing away, and she left me.
Yes.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
Are we getting into that? Because the whole abandonment issue is hardwired from way back.
And let me tell you, when my mother passed away, when I was in my early 20s or mid 20s, and Caitlin was a brand new baby, I never considered that she left me. Does that make sense? It's a different thing. I felt like somebody I loved being around was no longer going to be around. I felt like the person that helped mold me into the happy guy that I am was on a break.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And some of that's personality, and some of that, that's just our perspective on life,
Sure.
the way that we see things. You being an Enneagram 7, always look for the good in everything. Me being an 8 does not do that, and so I think it's good that we have very different perspectives of those life moments. I mean, that does happen, right? Your parents do die.
Yeah.
And
you lost 2 pretty close together. 11 months apart, right?
Yeah. They were really I lost my mom in 2011 and my dad in 2012.
Yeah.
And they both, were my dad was my biggest cheerleader for sure.
He was.
My mom became my biggest cheerleader later in life, but in the formative years was a massive dream killer. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
Well, and now you've got a big cheerleader in me.
Yes,
because I think you're the best thing ever.
Thank you. Yeah. And that is part of what we talked about in the last part of this series.
Right.
In part 2 was the people that you have in your corner and the difference between a dream keeper and a dream killer. And, and that's important. And so full circle here, what do you do if you fuck it all up?
What do you do if you fuck it all up?
So let's do this. What's the worst thing that could happen? And you factor that. So let's say you venture out and you start a new business.
Okay.
And
let's call it a consulting firm.
No, let's not. That's a little too personal.
Well, the reason I want to talk about that is because the session with Londa and David is brought to you by Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants, our consulting firm.
Right.
And it's interesting to me that we're talking about, what if we fuck it all up?
Okay, let's use this as an example.
So what's the worst that can happen?
The worst that can happen is you put a lot of time and energy and resources, money, into something that doesn't work out, and you have to move on and do something else.
And I always go to the worst that can happen is tragic, fiery death.
That's
with everything. Okay. I always go to that. And let me tell you, if a business fails, probably not tragic, fiery death. Do you know what I mean?
For me, I think about the financial impact.
Yes.
So you lose everything and you have to start over with nothing. The good news for me is that I know how to do that.
Right.
Because I've done it.
And
over and over and over again in my life. So, I know what skills I have that are really good. I know where I can apply those skills for the most return on my investment. I know, so it's those kind of things. Know yourself, know what you're good at, know what you can, turn it around on.
I don't believe the financial hardship, losing everything, is a real thing that can happen to you and I together. I don't believe that.
Well, I guess tell me what you mean by that.
There would have to be...
It could happen to anybody.
For us specifically, there would have to be an unusual sequence of events that are cataclysmic that we would not financially be okay. Like the business doesn't do well. That's not going to financially undo us. We do something and libel someone and get sued for it. That could undo the business a little, undo the finances a little bit.
Well, maybe that's why I didn't want to specifically talk about us, because for most people, if they'll invest everything they've got into something, and if it goes down, they got nothing left.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. And when I was a kid in radio, growing up in the business, used to listen to probably the best entrepreneurial radio show that there ever was, and that was the Bruce Williams Show. And people would call Bruce Williams and talk to him about starting a business. Often they talked about starting a small business like a landscaping firm. A lot of calls were people trying to start restaurants, a lot of them. And this is what Bruce Williams would ask them every single time. Would you be willing to mortgage everything you have and gamble with your kids' next meal to be in business? Mm-hmm. And 9 out of 10 people said, oh, Jesus, no way, Bruce. And he would say, you need to get off my show and go be an employee because you don't have what it takes to be a business owner.
That's right.
And I absolutely believe in that.
And so please see part 1 of this series where we talk about preparing for a big change.
So the moral of the story is I have zero fear as an entrepreneur because I know over an entire 49-year period that there's never been any task I've ever undertaken and not been financially successful, going all the way back to selling now and laters in 6th grade to the now former governor of Louisiana, Bobby Jindal. I saw something was missing in the school. I saw an opportunity because kids got an extra quarter with every lunch because Tropicana just came out with little plastic orange juices and every kid was buying them at lunchtime. And I thought, I can make a quarter from each one of those goofy kids if I sell something to them that's like gum, but not gum, because gum was not allowed.
Right.
Candy was, gum was not. So I found candy that was like gum, but it wasn't sticky, wouldn't stick to your desk. And I sold it to all those little gifted kids. And the reason I did it was because I had an opportunity.
Right.
I saw the opportunity and I took it.
Right.
I can do that and replicate that for the rest of my life.
Exactly. And that's like, I did something similar in school. And then
yours was more Breaking Bad style, though. It wasn't drugs. Don't get me wrong.
I wrote papers. This was in high school. I wrote papers for other people because I learned how to write in different voices, and I just assigned a voice to a person, and then I wrote their papers in that voice.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. It is so badass.
So, and when my kids were little and I didn't really have 2 dimes to rub together and I needed to come up with extra money, I flipped furniture. So I'd buy furniture or pick up free furniture. And this has become really popular right now. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it a lot, flipping and, flipping couches. There's a TikTok guy who all he talks about is flipping couches. He picked up free couches off of, Facebook Marketplace, and then he cleans them and sells them. And, because you can sell a couch if it's in fairly decent condition for several $100s.
And people will throw a couch out and put it on the corner if one of the screws in the leg is busted and now it's wobbly. They will set it on the corner.
All kinds of stuff. And so I did that when the kids were little. And there were a multitude of different things that I did to make extra money. The other thing that I did was really hone my skills on saving money.
Okay.
And so, I know how to. In fact, I did a talk one time called Pinching Pennies Till They Scream. And so, if you're down to your last several $100s, you should probably invest it in coaching with us, because you and I both know how to make something out of nothing. We've done it repeatedly over our lifetime.
Yes.
And I guarantee anybody who comes to us, whether it's their home budget or their business budget, I can find extra money in that budget and not necessarily dramatically change the way that they're doing things.
Sure.
And yet at the same time, if you've got to start over and you fucked it all up and now you don't know what to do, you better not be going to Starbucks.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or in our case, Mitchell's.
Downstairs. Mitchell's.
Coffee downstairs. 235
North Kentucky Avenue, I believe. I'm not sure. I think that's what it is.
231.
231.
Yeah.
We're 235?
This building, I think, is 231. I'm not sure, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Mitchell's Coffee in Lakeland, Florida.
Good coffee, nice kids running the place.
Yeah, great.
And you can see Mitch down there every now and then. I don't know what he's doing.
Great pastries. The pastries are stupid, and I feel like, it's the temptation of the devil every time I go in there.
I have none of that.
Yeah,
I just want my sugar-free vanilla Americano.
You don't like sweets. But anyway, so that's what I would say. Like, we're really well-versed in doing this. So if you find yourself, I would say another thing is to cut your losses before you've lost it all.
Mm-hmm.
If the ship's going down and you're not sure if you're going to make it, reach out to someone like us, like a buddy of mine did a year and a half ago, who was in real estate, was going to quit real estate because the ship was going down. His credit cards were maxed out, didn't know how he was going to pay his bills, and said, I'm going to quit real estate. And I said, you're too good to quit this. We sat down for an hour. He brought me his pipeline of, potential clients that he had. There were 8 in the pipeline. And I just went through learning to write in different voices makes me really gifted at script writing for different people.
Yes.
Right. And it's endless. My imagination's, thankfully I have this crazy imagination because I'm able to do this. And so I said, okay, one by one, we just took them one by one. And I said, with this client, tell me more about your relationship with them. I asked him a lot of questions. Okay, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to say. This is what your follow-up's going to be.
Yep.
I wrote out scripts. I said, how does that feel to you when you say it out loud? We role played it, felt like him, felt great. And 2 weeks later, all 8 of those people were under contract. So that was 1 hour of time.
Yeah.
And so it really, really can make a big difference to make an investment in something like our consulting firm when you're going down or when you want to increase, but the other thing that you have to do is cut the line.
Yeah.
Cut the line before it sinks the whole ship.
And we can coach you up or coach you out.
For sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that years ago from a manager. You don't ever fire people. You get them to decide that's it for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we teach other people how to do that too. The person who runs our salon in Tri-Cities, Washington.
That's right.
She got some great coaching from someone who I also get some coaching from about that very topic.
Mm-hmm.
We talked with her about it, and she had somebody in there working in the salon who, through the coach you up or coach you out process, this person realized, I don't really want to be doing this.
Right. And you know what? There is nothing wrong with trying something and not loving it. There is nothing wrong with trying something and realizing it's not for you.
Right.
There's absolutely zero wrong with that. The problem is when you try something, don't enjoy it, but stay with it because you believe you have no other options.
Oof.
That's awful. That makes you throw up while you're brushing your teeth in the morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The other thing, that's a really good point. The other thing to not do is quit your full-time job while you try something new.
Right.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's dumb. Nope. Do it in your free time. Oh, I don't have free time. Well, the same thing that I can do with money, I can do with time. You do have free time, and I can find it, and I can tell you where to use it. And you don't need a lot of it.
Yes.
15 minutes a day focused on something that you're interested in, the trajectory of that can be really life-changing.
Yes.
You just need little pockets of time.
Little pockets of
time. And I can
time.
find them.
Tiny, tiny pockets.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, if you're watching a TV series or you're scrolling on social media or you're whatever, you have time.
Yes.
How
about wake up 15 minutes earlier every day and focus for 15 minutes?
You don't even have to do that.
But that's the easiest way to not steal time from yourself, right? Time for me is a big deal.
For me, I hate that because I don't like to give up my sleep.
I gotcha.
So I will find it someplace else.
I gotcha.
That might work for some people, but giving up something I don't really care that much about,
right,
and that's the thing. That's the trick. Give up a little bit of time that you're investing in something that, you can take it or leave it.
Okay.
For me, I can't take or leave sleep because I don't sleep well. So if I'm sleeping soundly, I don't want an alarm to go off.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Sure.
Because I may not have really fallen asleep till 4:30 that morning.
Yeah.
So
that's why when I wake up in the morning, I tiptoe out of the room. I sure do. Yeah, because I don't want to bother you. And I don't know when you're sleeping and not sleeping. And it's weird to me when I wake up and you're not in the room because that's unlike you. And then I find out that you didn't sleep at all. Yeah. And there you are in the living room doing something else. I don't know. Horrible. When I sleep, I'm asleep. And when I'm awake, I'm super, super awake.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think I guess the moral of the story is you don't really have anything to lose.
And that's what I'm talking about, because no matter how bad something is, it ain't fiery death. Sometimes it is fiery death, and you can't avoid it. It's done.
Rare. That's
you know what I mean, though?
Rare. Yeah.
The end is coming, but it ain't tomorrow.
Right.
In most cases. Sometimes it is.
And, if you can't find the motivation within yourself, to go forward, to put one foot in front of the other, use the people around you to motivate you. I've done that a million times. I was, so depressed. I was suicidal at one point in my life. And
after your mom died? Is that when it was?
No. Mm-mm. It was between child number 6 and child number 7.
Okay.
I had 2 miscarriages, and they were about 7 months apart, and it just, threw me into a suicidal depression. I didn't know what to do about it. And eventually I thought, okay, how do I go on? And this is what I thought at the time. My kid's dad, I thought, nobody's going to marry this guy with 6 kids. If I killed myself, he'd be left alone with 6 kids.
Okay.
Who's going to raise them? Nobody wants to raise somebody else's 6 kids. And whether that's true or not, this was the conversation I had in my head. And I thought, well, okay, I gotta stick around to raise these kids. Well, okay, what kind of life are you giving them right now? Because I was a zombie.
Okay.
All the time. Like, I was not functioning well.
How long ago was this? 18 years ago? 19?
Well, David Michael, the youngest, number 7, is about to be 19, so it's maybe 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Peter and Danielle, the 2 oldest, were maybe 10 and 8, 11 and 9, about that.
Yeah.
And kind of running the household. I'm not proud of that, but that's just that was what was happening.
Yes.
And their dad was not very far into a brand new career. So very focused there. And didn't know what to do with me.
Hard.
Very hard situation.
Yeah.
And in that, there was a tipping point moment for me. And I thought, okay, nobody's going to do this but me. What quality of life am I giving these kids right now? It's not good. It's not something I could be proud of in 20 years from now. And so I remember thinking that over and kind of letting that roll around in my head. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, okay, I'm going to put my feet on the floor today. And I'm going to put one in front of the other. And we'll see what happens. And just through sheer grit and determination, put one foot in front of the other. And eventually the fog started to lift. eventually I saw them again, because it was like being in a really heavy fog all the time.
Okay. And were you taken to bed? I mean, were you in bed all the time, depressed? How did that look normally?
I sat on the couch.
Okay. And just kind of sat there distant.
In a daze.
And you guys didn't have TV, so you weren't watching television. You were just sitting there.
I think that was the part of the time where there wasn't TV. I don't remember for sure.
Yeah.
But the one thing I could do, and that I did do, was read. I was reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, Little House on the Prairie, to my kids.
I think that was what caused the turning point, because you told me about this once on our hike, about her saying, put one foot in front of the other. Tell me that. What was that?
Yeah. So in the last book was published after her death by her daughter, Rose.
Okay.
And so it's much more journal-like. And the point of this is inspiration to go on can come from anywhere.
Right.
So don't ignore it.
Yes.
So it's much more journal-like, because the books were written from her journals, but she wrote them, except this last one.
Yes.
Right? And so there's a portion in the story where she's just lost a baby.
Mm-hmm.
He took fever and died, and she's very depressed.
Right.
And doesn't call it depressed, doesn't use that word, but that's what it is. And she says, I don't remember the baby's name. I think it might have been Jack, which is interesting. But let's just say, for the sake of this story, it was Jack.
Okay.
And she says, Jack is dead. Jack is gone, and I want to be gone too.
Okay. That's a pretty definitive statement.
Right.
And that spoke to your soul.
Not yet.
Okay, keep going.
She says, then they were, living on the land and all that.
Mm-hmm.
She said, but it's harvest time.
Mm-hmm.
Harvest is here. And I'm the one who must do it.
Yeah, can't lay around being sad during harvest. Unless you want it all to rot on the vine.
And that was kind of a wake-up moment.
Okay.
For me. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, yeah. Nobody else is going to do this. This is my job. This was the choice I made to have these kids. And now I want to just give up partway through. We don't get to give up partway through.
Right.
So finish what you started. And so, and I didn't really learn that till I was an adult.
Right.
Because my parents kind of let me quit everything I didn't like.
Yeah.
They never made me finish it until,
Right.
And so, So then one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And I think during that time, there were some things before that. There've been some things since it. But I think during that time, one of the hardest seasons of my life to go forward was really when I honed the skill of head down, one foot in front of the other. Eventually, the clouds will lift. Eventually, the sun will come out. Eventually, you'll figure out where you are. Eventually, right, if you do that long enough.
And that is my point when I say, think about the worst time of your life and where are you now? Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, when I say that to somebody, they think about the time that they had, despair and loss and financial uncertainty. And then they, picture, well, I just bought a house and the house is pretty awesome and I have a great job. And you know what I mean? Most people easily coach themselves out of it when you have a conversation like that about them. And it's cool that you did that all on your own. You didn't have somebody magically holding your hand and walking you through it. And it came from the lightning rod moment came from something you read. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it can come from anywhere. And it was probably that season of my life was probably the beginning of my interest in coaching.
I gotcha.
Because I coached myself out of that.
Okay.
And I thought, I want to help other people do this.
That's awesome.
So,
and I've
done that for 19 years now.
Yeah. And in the 2+ years now that we've been married, I've talked to you a lot about how, well, you've got training in this type of thought process and this type of communication that I just don't have. You know what I mean?
And it's because I've done a lot of study in my free time.
Right. That's right. You
I know
are one of the most avid learners I know, and it's not from a school.
Right.
Yeah.
I am not cut out for school. Traditional learning where you sit in a classroom and all that, I am not built for that, but I am an avid learner. So I know quite a bit about personalities, mental health, coaching, consulting, business, because I've studied all of it for my whole life. Well, since I was probably 18, I got kind of the bug, right? And so, which is why I do what I do now,
right?
Because I've loved it for 30 years.
Yeah.
I love moving people forward from where you are to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, to where you want to be.
And that can happen personally or in your business.
Yeah.
Again, the session with Londa and David is brought to you by Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants. Call Londa today at 509-491-2663 to move forward. 509-491-2663.
Absolutely.
No job is too big and no business is too small for Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants.
I love doing it for homes too.
Yeah, you do. You do.
I love it.
Because,
you know, the 6 or 7 years that I spent as, quote, the mom coach, right? I did a lot of coaching and speaking to different mom groups all over the country. And it was so much fun because the same way that you can streamline a business and you can, you know, cut the expenses and increase the income and all that stuff, make it more efficient, more profitable, more fun, more peaceful.
Yes.
You can do all that for the home too. And I love doing both.
Right.
So,
well, if your home's a comfortable place, right?
Yeah.
I loved it. We were spending time with our daughter Danielle and her husband Christian because they came to Florida to visit.
And Easton.
Yep, and Easton, our grandson, and he's just a super cool little dude. Anyway, we were talking to them, and Danielle said something that made me fall in love with her anew, just like you. It sounded just like something you would say, and it was the greatest thing I've ever heard. And what she said was, and I don't know that she knows that I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. What she said was, yeah, you know, I want the house to be perfect when Chris gets home from work so that he can relax and not have to stress about the house. I want it to be a perfect environment. And I know for sure she got that from you.
Well, she said he says to her, you don't need to worry about that. And she says, well, that's what was modeled for me.
Yes. Yep. And, you know, hearing that girl talk like that about how she has taken that on as her responsibility is wonderful and beautiful. And that made me so happy and see her in a whole new light. Don't get me wrong. I've always thought she was a talented, smart, hard worker, which are characteristics that I have always thought are of you as well. And I've gotten to observe her professionally because she practically ran the dentist office that I used to go to for, you know, 10 years. So I've always been very impressed by her. But when she said that, I just, you know, what an awesome kid. Yeah. That's what I thought at that moment. And and it's because she's a lot like you. And I love that about her. Love it. Love it. So the moral of the story is, and we don't have a ton more time to keep going, but the moral of the story is, as I see it, is there's very little truly at risk if you want to start over. Very little at risk. You're not going to die in a fiery crash if you start over, unless starting over means you're going to go fly helicopters with Kobe Bryant. You're not going to... Too soon? Too soon?
Ouch.
You said let it go. You said just be ourselves today. Wow. So that's what I'm doing.
Wow. Okay.
So it's not going to ruin your life to decide to do something different if what you're doing is something you don't like, because if you don't like it, that is ruining your life.
I'd agree with you there.
Your health will suffer if you're doing something you hate. Your Friendships and relationships will suffer if you're living a life you don't love, because you won't be able to love other people appropriately. And financially, I don't care what you say, but if you're doing something you hate, it is not financially sustainable. It is not.
It's just
you might
not
be
worth
making
it.
a ton of money right now doing what you're doing, but
Right.
it's not sustainable because you don't love it. So stop thinking about living a better life and start living a better life. That is what starting over is all about.
I cannot argue with that.
That's the last 3 episodes right there in the last 90
That's
seconds.
it. I love it.
3 episodes
You did it.
wrapped up in 90 seconds. And there you go. There you have it, and there it is. Honey, I got to tell you, you didn't expect to tell me about the saddest moment in your life
I didn't,
today.
and that was terrible.
It was terrible.
You skeezed me.
But I got to tell you, every time I learn something new about you, I'm more impressed by you
Well, thank you.
and think you're just the right fit for me.
I hope it helps someone.
It will.
I hope so.
And I
'Cause
liked it when your eyes got all glossy, because I got a thing for that, and it's a weird thing, and I apologize. My name is David Austin for Londa Sherwood Austin, and this has been The Session with Londa and David, brought to you by Sherwood Austin Growth Consultants. Call Londa today at 509-491-2663. That's 509-491-2663. We'll talk to you next week.